Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, a major search and rescue operation still underway after a major earthquake struck Afghanistan. Hundreds killed and thousands more are injured. Villagers look on at crumbled homes and lost family members among the devastation. Malcolm Hudson reports. Officials confirmed that the navigation system of a plane carrying the European Commission president was jammed. Ariane Pazdar has how this affected the landing as GPS, radar, and other tools were not functioning. School has started in Israel, and officials say it's due to the achievements of the Israeli military. Meanwhile, Israel pushes back after a scholars association accuses the country of genocide. Jason Perry with the details. President Trump demanding data on vaccine effectiveness as he says debates over the jab are ripping the CDC apart. What's his take on vaccines and what's the latest on D.C. crime as Trump floats sending troops to Chicago? Mariotsu at the White House.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. Hundreds killed and thousands more injured after a 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck Afghanistan Sunday night. Rescuers struggled to reach remote and mountainous areas to help the affected regions as part of a mammoth aid operation. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this.
More than 800 people were killed and thousands more injured as a major earthquake struck southeastern Afghanistan late on Sunday. It's one of the worst such disasters in the country in recent years.
It was midnight when the earthquake started and shook us all violently, even breaking our house. God had mercy, and we managed to escape outside.
This was my brother's house, and he, along with 3 of his children, were martyred. My other brother, together with his sons, was also martyred there. 2 of my nephews have also been martyred. This is the condition of our home. Our dead are lying there on the ground.
The 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck just before midnight local time at a depth of 10 kilometers. The epicenter lay near the eastern city of Jalalabad. It's one of the 5 largest cities in Afghanistan and the capital of the Nangarhar province. Tremors were also felt in other South Asian countries, including neighboring Pakistan and India. Authorities scrambled to rescue survivors. A provincial public health head said they prepared 4 or 5 ambulances last night.
We traveled during the night and arrived here at early morning prayer time after walking for 5 to 6 hours. Currently, 4 to 5 helicopters have carried the injured, and the evacuation is still ongoing.
The Afghan Taliban government has mobilized several teams related to security, health, transport, food and more to ensure comprehensive and full support is provided to those affected. At least 40 flights have been carried out to transport bodies and more than 400 of the injured. Afghanistan is prone to devastating earthquakes and it experienced tremors with a magnitude of more than 5.0 on at least 4 occasions between April and August alone. Sunday's earthquake, however, is the worst since June 2022, when a 6.0 magnitude quake killed more than 1,000 people. Afghanistan's location is at the intersection of 2 major tectonic plates, the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. As the Indian plate moves northward and collides with the Eurasian plate, the pressure between the two creates regular seismic activity in the region. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
EU officials confirmed that the navigation system on a plane carrying the European Commission president was jammed. The plane reported interference with its GPS, radar, and other tools before landing safely. NTD's international correspondent Ariane Pazdar has more.
They suspect that this was due to blatant interference by Russia.
The European Commission says Bulgarian authorities suspect that Russia is behind a recent plane jamming incident. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was heading to Bulgaria on Sunday when her plane's navigation system was reportedly blocked. The EU says the plane was unable to use GPS, radar, direction finders and more while approaching the airport to land.
We are, of course, aware and used to somehow to the threats and intimidations that are a regular component of Russia's hostile behavior.
Meanwhile, von der Leyen is in Lithuania on Monday. The EU has been using the profits from Russian assets frozen in the West to support Ukraine. Von der Leyen now says this project might be expanded.
So far, 3.7 billion euros have been generated by windfall profits, and more is to come on a regular basis.
She added that Russia should be held accountable for the invasion of Ukraine. A group of Western allies called the Coalition of the Willing is scheduled to meet in Paris on Thursday, talking about security guarantees for Ukraine. And in Kiev on Monday, the country bids farewell to a former parliamentary speaker killed in a shooting. Pro-Western politician Andrei Peryubi was shot dead in the city of Lviv on Saturday. Ukraine's national police chief on Monday said there is Russian involvement. Everyone will be held accountable. Also on Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China. He praised a meeting he had with President Trump in Alaska 2 weeks ago.
The mutual understanding that was reached at a recent Russia-U.S. summit in Alaska heads the same direction. I hope it paves the way to peace in Ukraine.
Putin made the comments during the two-day meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The organization is an international group founded to counter Western alliances. Among other things, the Russian president used the occasion to strengthen ties with the Iranian regime.
I would like to highlight our friendly relations as well as the special and many-sided nature of ties between Russia and Iran.
During remarks on Monday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping set out a vision for a new global order challenging the US and the West. Xi says non-Western leaders should rearrange how security and economic structures are being set up. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Children began school today in Israel, and officials say it's because of Israel's achievements in the war against Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israel refutes the accusation of a scholars association that says Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
On Monday, first graders played in the band as they welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on their first day of school. He visited a school in Galilee in northern Israel, an area that faced regular attacks from the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group in Lebanon, until they reached a ceasefire last November. Schools in Israel have faced closures for almost 2 years now, since the war started after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. Netanyahu said this after meeting with the students.
At the beginning of the war, we saw abandonment, but today, 95% of the children in the north have returned to schools, even in the border settlements. This is a tremendous achievement.
A student at another school said it was very exciting to return to school, but added this.
And it's really upsetting and really sad that you need to go to school with knowing that there are still hostages in Gaza.
And U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee visited a school as well.
Israel has to get the hostages back, and Israel has to defeat Hamas. And how that happens is something that Israel has to decide.
However, on the same day, a group called the International Association of Genocide Scholars accused Israel of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The association's president said this.
There isn't just a blanket right to self-defense. So that self-defense has to be carried out in a proportionate manner, and it also has to be shown to be something carried out from military necessity, neither of which are demonstrated anymore by Israel's actions on the ground in Gaza.
Israel's foreign ministry in a post on X responded to the group's accusation, saying, quote, "It is entirely based on Hamas's campaign of lies and the laundering of those lies by others." For instance, Israel says that when the Hamas terrorist group provides the number of deaths in the war in the Gaza Strip, it doesn't distinguish between combatants killed and civilians killed. John Spencer, chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, spoke about the issue on the Middle East Forum podcast. He said that Israel has done more to prevent civilian harm than any military in the history of urban warfare, with measures like evacuating cities and giving advance notice ahead of combat operations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
President Trump is urging drug makers to prove vaccine effectiveness as he says debates are dividing the CDC. He's also touting a victory in the D.C. crime crackdown while urging other cities to work with him. NTD's Washington correspondent Mariotsu brings us the latest.
President Trump today is urging drug companies to make public data on COVID vaccines that they've shared with him to clear up what he calls a mess over the drug's effectiveness. The president demands an answer as he says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is being ripped apart over the question. Last week, the president touted his first administration's vaccine development efforts during COVID.
Operation Warp Speed, people say, is one of the greatest achievements ever in politics or in the military, because it was almost a military procedure.
In his Monday post, President Trump acknowledges debates over vaccine effectiveness. Just last week, the CDC director was fired over disagreements over vaccine policy with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Several officials stepped down in protest. And in other news, President Trump is praising D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser for working with his administration to combat crime in the nation's capital.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C.
Since the D.C. crime crackdown began 3 weeks ago, authorities have made over 1,500 arrests and seized over 160 illegal guns. The president is calling D.C. a, quote, giant victory and says that the crime rate has come down to virtually nothing. 54 people were shot and 7 killed in Chicago over Labor Day weekend. But the Chicago mayor this weekend ordered city police not to work with National Guard troops as President Trump threatens to send them. While Governor Pritzker warns that a federal deployment without the state's request would be unconstitutional, the president urges Democratic leaders to work with his administration, just like the D.C. mayor. The White House on Thursday saying,
President Trump has done more for D.C. residents than Democrats did in 50 years. And this can be replicated in other crime-ridden cities across the nation. As President Trump has said, all of these elected officials in charge have to do is pick up the phone and ask for the president and the federal government's help.
President Trump says that Mayor Bowser's ratings have gone up since her cooperation and that other cities could see similar results if they worked with his administration. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
The Trump administration is also zeroing in on voter identification. President Trump says he'll issue an executive order requiring voter ID for every ballot cast. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and reactions after a federal appeals court struck down many of the president's tariffs.
President Trump wrote on Truth Social on Saturday, "Voter ID must be part of every single vote, no exceptions. I will be doing an executive order to that end." Trump also vowed to eliminate mail-in voting, except for overseas military and those incapacitated by illness. The president has long called for paper ballots and hand counts, and earlier this month pledged to ban mail-in ballots and voting machines ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Turning to trade, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Sunday it's full steam ahead with negotiations, despite a court ruling that most of Trump's tariffs are illegal. Greer says the administration will appeal the ruling, speaking on Fox and Friends.
This is not over. All the tariffs are still in effect.
Greer warned withdrawing the tariffs would devastate the economy.
It would be disastrous. Remember that over President Biden's presidency, the trade deficit increased by 40%. It was already enormous, and it increased to $1.2 trillion, which means manufacturing jobs overseas, importing food from overseas. The imbalance is just unsustainable.
The trade representative says pulling the rug from out under tariffs would harm the country.
We've negotiated a number of great trade deals with companies premised on the existence of these tariffs.
The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit Friday ruled 7-4 that President Trump's reciprocal tariffs on U.S. trading partners are mostly illegal. Trump thanked one of the case judges on Truth Social, writing, "One Democrat, Obama appointed, actually voted to save our country. I would like to thank him for his courage. He loves and respects the USA. Trump also wrote that, quote, without tariffs and all of the trillions of dollars we have already taken in, our country would be completely destroyed and our military power would be instantly obliterated. Trump had invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to declare a national security emergency as grounds for the tariffs. The ruling will not take effect until October 14th, giving the Trump administration time to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro says the administration is confident the High Court will back the president. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, Congress will be back in session this week after a month-long recess. Crime and national security will be the first issues lawmakers will tackle as a government funding battle looms in late September. Luis Eduardo Martinez brings us a preview. Kentucky's Attorney General announces the state will end reduced tuition for illegal immigrants at public universities. Arlene Richards takes a closer look after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Congress will reconvene this week. Lawmakers are set to tackle important bills on national security, crime, and violence in U.S. cities. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has more on the story.
Crime in U.S. cities will be the first order of business for lawmakers once Congress reconvenes this week. The Trump administration has been working with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune on a comprehensive crime bill. The details have not yet been revealed, but it is expected to address cashless bail in U.S. cities, more funding for police departments, and expanded authority for the president to deploy the National Guard.
We cannot allow crime to devastate, ruin our great cities in America, certainly not the greatest capital in the world. And so we've got to end the crime wave, we've got to clean up the city, and we've got to make sure that it shines as it should, as the nation's greatest capital.
Democrats have also proposed to pass legislation to address mental health issues and early intervention to prevent violence like the shooting at the Catholic school in Minneapolis last week.
It wasn't that political when we said let's get resources to community violence intervention groups, to hospitals that do intervention in the hospitals, to health-based intervention, to make sure that our communities are closer together and that we stop the curb of gun violence.
Senators are also set to address the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026. The proposed legislation has significant provisions to bolster U.S. military preparedness in the Indo-Pacific and enhance U.S. allies to counter the growing aggressive posture of the Chinese Communist Party in the region.
The friendship between Taiwan and the United States is strong, it's long-lasting, and its future is bright. We come here today at a time of great importance and actually great danger, not only in this region but worldwide.
Congress will also have to pass government funding for fiscal year 2026 before the end of September or face a government shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The Trump administration is upping its immigration enforcement plans in Chicago. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has confirmed more federal agents are on their way. Here's what we know.
The Department of Homeland Security is sending additional resources to Chicago, part of President Trump's broader plan to expand federal immigration enforcement. Noem confirmed this on CBS's Face the Nation in an interview on Sunday.
Well, we've already had ongoing operations with ICE in Chicago and throughout Illinois and other states, making sure that we're upholding our laws. But we do intend to add more resources to those operations.
The DHS has asked Naval Stations Great Lakes, 35 miles north of Chicago, to provide limited support in the form of facilities and other logistical needs. Noem defended past federal operations like in Los Angeles, crediting them with preventing widespread destruction and claiming thousands of arrests.
So many of those homes and businesses that were in downtown LA and in those areas were dealing with riots and violence, and coming in and bringing those federal law enforcement officers in was incredibly important to keeping peace.
But Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said on CBS the administration was disrupting people's lives and called what it was doing dangerous and un-American. Noem responded, saying for 13 consecutive years, Chicago has had more murders than any other American city. This comes as President Trump ramps up criticism of Pritzker, warning on social media that Chicago must, quote, straighten it out fast or we're coming. Noem says Chicago is not being singled out, saying DHS is evaluating operations in cities nationwide, regardless of politics.
Every single city is evaluated for what we need to do there to make it safer. So we've got operations that, again, I won't talk about details on, but we absolutely are not looking through the viewpoint at anything we're doing with a political lens.
After her interview aired, Secretary Noem accused CBS of selectively editing her remarks on immigration enforcement in a high-profile MS-13 case. In a statement, Noem said the network, quote, shamefully edited the interview to whitewash the truth. She said she was talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a suspected gang member and human smuggler. The department says CBS cut parts of Noem's answers describing Garcia's alleged crimes and defending Trump's enforcement actions. CBS has published the entire transcript on its website, including the portions Noem says were edited out of the broadcast. In an editor's note, the network says Abrego Garcia has not been charged with some of the things Noem accused him of, including counts of child abuse. Meanwhile, with federal agents preparing to move into Chicago, a legal fight could be coming. The city's mayor has signed an executive order barring the Chicago Police Department from helping federal authorities with immigration enforcement or any related patrols.
NTD reached out to CBS Face the Nation for a response to allegations from the Department of Homeland Security, but we haven't heard back yet. Kentucky is partnering with the Department of Justice to end in-state tuition for illegal immigrants at public universities. This comes after the department sued the state in June, challenging its residency regulations. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman announced on Sunday his state's plan to stop offering in-state tuition to illegal immigrants. In a social media post, the AG said, proud to partner with AG Pam Bondi and President Trump to bring common sense back to our Commonwealth. The announcement follows a lawsuit filed by the Justice Department in June. The suit challenged Kentucky's administrative regulations, which provided reduced in-state tuition at public universities to illegal immigrants who graduated from a state high school. It claims that this law unconstitutionally discriminates against U.S. citizens who are not afforded the same privilege in direct conflict with federal law. Weeks after the suit was filed, Coleman sent a letter to the state body responsible for the regulation, the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education. He urged the council to rescind its policy. Coleman advised them that their regulation conflicted with federal immigration law and that the government had sued Kentucky because of it. Coleman told Fox News the council agreed to change state policy 2 months after the Justice Department first took the Commonwealth to court. The AG said under current federal law, any illegal immigrant is barred from eligibility for post-secondary education benefits, like in-state tuition, unless the same benefits are offered to every U.S. citizen. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is recovering after he was hurt during a car crash in New Hampshire. This happened in Manchester on Saturday night. His spokesperson said the incident was not a targeted attack. According to a statement from Giuliani's head of security, the former mayor's car was hit from behind by a speeding vehicle. Shortly before the crash, Giuliani was flagged down by a woman who says she was involved in a domestic violence incident. Giuliani stayed with the woman until police could arrive. Soon after that, Giuliani's vehicle was hit. The 81-year-old was taken to a trauma center. He suffered a broken bone in his back and injuries to his arm and leg. He's expected to remain in a hospital for several days. His spokesman added that Giuliani is, quote, in good spirits and recovering tremendously. And today, President Trump announced he's awarding Giuliani the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Trump called Giuliani the greatest mayor in the history of New York City and an equally great American patriot. Details on the time and place for the award are still to be announced. Coming up, leaders in the nation's capital share Labor Day greetings, while the Labor Department's headquarters building shows off a decorative look for the holiday. And how's the labor market performing under President Trump? An economic researcher joins us to explore the current employment situation when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Democratic and Republican leaders in Washington, D.C. share greetings for Labor Day, and the White House highlights its efforts to make improvements for the American worker. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Democrat and Republican leaders celebrate Labor Day with messages on social media. Former President Biden writes, "Today we celebrate American workers, the heart and soul of our nation." Vice President J.D. Vance writes, "Happy Labor Day to the workers who make America great." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer shares a Labor Day greeting with a video from New York.
I love New York labor.
And the White House touts efforts to improve the private sector, including, quote, slashing job-killing regulations by reducing penalties on small businesses and creating more jobs by bringing manufacturing and production, quote, back home. The White House also highlighted its efforts to create more apprenticeship programs, something Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Remir says she's been working on.
The president wants 1 million active apprentices, and so I'm on the ground talking to the trades, talking to the firefighters, talking to law enforcement.
And this Labor Day, amid President Trump's beautification efforts for Washington, D.C., the Department of Labor is decked out with hundreds of American flags in its lawn and two big photos, one of President Trump and one of President Theodore Roosevelt, along with a giant American flag in the center. The Department of Labor was established in 1913 by President William Howard Taft. Labor Day was first recognized as a holiday on a national level in 1894. President Grover Cleveland signed a law establishing the first Monday in September as Labor Day. Coming into the weekend, some members of President Trump's cabinet shared stories of their first jobs.
My first job was as a lifeguard.
My first job was working in the Washington Zoo.
My first job was not unique. It was delivering newspapers in downtown Honolulu.
Well, I started at my local community library.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
From the joy of getting your first paycheck to the revulsion of scrubbing public bathrooms, this Labor Day, NTD's Sam Wong headed to the National Mall in D.C. to talk with people about their first ever job experience. Each of these stories is a small yet powerful reflection on the American dream. Let's take a listen.
What was your first job, and what did it teach you about the value of work and life?
I was a paperboy. Earned enough money when I was 12 to buy a car when I was 15.
My first ever job was at Taco Bell, and
oh geez,
yeah, in Asheville, Ohio. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, you know. I ain't gonna swear, we're on TV, so but it was quite the experience, and put me ahead now.
Any horror story?
No, not really, you know, other than, you know, find flies in the beans.
So my first ever job was at the beach. I was a rental attendant. And then I also waited tables at a retirement complex. So both those jobs kind of taught me some different things. One, just the value of hard work, because I had to dig a 3-foot hole to put the thing in every morning. And then, just the ability to communicate.
My first job was working at Chick-fil-A, and I actually still work there. And I got that job because I wanted to buy a car.
So you're still saving up?
Yes, still saving.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
It was a little bit different than the average job because I was a professional figure skater and I traveled across the United States and Canada. Sometimes we had to do 3 shows a day, and by that 3rd show, everybody was so tired, but you still have to physically, be a show person and put it on.
Talking about value of work and life, what did your first job mean to you?
What did it mean to me? Pretty much, like I said, it just gave me a different stability where, if you want something in life, pretty much you have to work for it and go get it.
Just being able to make money and pay for things. Back then it was the 70s and I had $3,000. I could buy a 1973 Camaro.
Probably with Chick-fil-A, it's one of the higher end fast food companies, and so our values are very get your food out on time, make sure it's right, and make sure it's really fast when it comes out.
I was handling money and receipts and all that kind of stuff at 15, and I had never handled any money before. I had to learn honesty too. I pocketed $120 the whole time I was there. Felt awful about it the next day, turned in the receipt and put it in there. I couldn't sleep that night, so I was like, I'm not gonna steal ever again.
Honestly, I wanted to come home, but my parents said, no, you signed a contract, you will fulfill the contract. So I learned perseverance, and you work, you get paid, you fulfill your obligation.
To explore the current employment situation in the country this Labor Day, we're joined by Jason Sorens. He's a senior research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, as the nation celebrates Labor Day today, what does the current employment situation tell us about the state of the economy?
Yes, this Labor Day, we're not terribly sure what the employment outlook in the U.S. looks like. We just had that big controversial jobs revision that led to President Trump firing the BLS commissioner. And so over the last 3 months, we've only seen an average of 35,000 jobs per month. And that's very much on the low side. And that has led to speculation the Federal Reserve will cut rates at this month's meeting. So really, we're waiting to see what the labor market really is like. We've seen a continued growth in employment of the native-born and a big decline in employment of the foreign-born. And different surveys are giving us different pictures there. So we don't know for certain how big the decline in the foreign-born workforce has been. It's, of course, quite possible that a lot of them have left the country, and that may be affecting the job numbers.
Now, President Trump campaigned on no tax on tips, bringing manufacturing home and putting American workers first. Are we seeing that play out as he promised, or what are some of the biggest changes this administration has implemented when it comes to U.S. employment?
Well, we have seen the administration follow through on no tax on tips, at least up to, I think it's $25,000 in the big, beautiful bill. They've also reduced taxes on Social Security earnings and taxes on overtime earnings. Economists don't love those ideas because it may distort people toward taking more overtime or trying to take more tips. But you have to say this was a campaign promise, and Congress followed through on it. So that's been a big policy. I think really the main thing the Trump administration has tried to do that's been pro-employment and pro-wage growth is business tax cuts and making those permanent, doing full expensing for small businesses. That's a fairly obscure, kind of wonky type of topic, but economists think that that's the sort of thing that actually can generate job growth because employers now realize that they can essentially keep more of what they earn. That gives them incentive to produce more and to hire more workers.
And areas seeing growth are blue-collar jobs, and as you mentioned, American workers. The Treasury Department released data showing real blue-collar wages posting their most significant gain in almost 60 years. The job market is also seeing a narrowing gap between employed U.S. and foreign-born workers. What do those indicators tell us about the state of the economy, or do they tell us something?
Yes, well, it's positive news, of course, that earnings have been going up, even adjusted for inflation. Real earnings growth over the last year has been about 1.3%. So that's, even though inflation is a little higher still than we'd like it to be, the fact that American wage gains are outpacing that, unlike, say, in 2021 and 2022, is definitely positive news for the American worker. And I think that's something that the Trump administration would like to see continue. It could tell us one of two things. It could tell us that the productivity growth of the U.S. economy is still very strong, and that these wage gains should continue because the American worker is becoming more productive. The negative side of this is sometimes what you can find is that if the economy is doing poorly, sometimes it is the least productive workers who find it hard to find jobs. And so there's a kind of a selection effect where it's the more productive workers who still have jobs, and so that makes wage growth look good. So we don't really know which of those two stories is true right now, but so far, so good, I think the Trump administration would say, in terms of the labor market for the American worker.
And Jason, given that early labor unions said the purpose of Labor Day was to honor the economic and social contributions of workers, are we seeing more or fewer of those contributions in the economy now?
Yeah, I think the American worker is unbeaten. When we look at other advanced industrialized economies, the American worker works harder, works longer hours, is more productive. And that's led to the U.S. now outpacing Europe by something like 20% in terms of GDP per capita. And that's really all down to the American worker. So I think Americans can be proud of how hard we work and of our technological advancements that have allowed us to be more productive.
Now, to your earlier point, when it comes to foreign workers, preliminary Census Bureau data as seen by Pew Research Center shows that over 1.2 million immigrants have disappeared from the labor force. Now, that's including both legal and illegal immigrants from January through the end of July. How are you reading those numbers and the direction of the U.S. labor force as a result?
Yeah, it's not clear how credible that estimate is, because it could be that foreign-born workers are less likely to respond to surveys, and maybe their employers are less likely to respond to surveys as well. And that could be, a result of the fact that they fear getting deported or other things like that. So it's not clear that really that decline has been that steep. And in some ways, if the decline has not been that steep, that's better news in terms of the jobs numbers. Maybe those jobs numbers are a little bit understated.
And all of this does come amid scrutiny over the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as you mentioned, especially after President Trump fired Commissioner Erica McEnthofer after the release of the weaker than expected July jobs report. Now, the president alleged that McEnthofer rigged the jobs numbers to harm him politically. How do the BLS numbers fit in with understanding the U.S. economy more broadly?
Yeah, I would say most economists and observers who look at these numbers would not say that they're rigged, but certainly the methodology has become less accurate over time, just as political polling has become less accurate over time, because Americans are less likely to respond to surveys. We get them often through text message on our phones. We're more likely to ignore them than in the past. And so there are definitely some improvements that need to be made in terms of survey methodology and reaching especially small business employers for that all-important job survey.
Well, Jason Sarnes, thank you so much for joining us on Labor Day.
Thanks for having me.
And tonight on Capitol Report, doctors Robert and Jill Malone reveal how psychological warfare is now being used on Americans.
Big Ag created fake nonprofits. Those fake nonprofits then paid conservative influencers to attack this idea.
It was $1,000 a tweet. Was the going rate. When the government decides that it wants to deploy what was originally designed for offshore combat against their own citizens, then the idea of free and fair elections becomes completely obsolete. Yeah.
They'll break down the tactics shaping what you see, feel, and even how you vote. That's tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. And tragedy in Texas. A family in Houston has lost an 11-year-old boy after he allegedly took part in a prank. Police say the individual and his friends were ringing neighbors' doorbells at night when one resident responded with a gun. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Police in Houston are investigating a prank that left an 11-year-old boy dead. Houston PD says the incident happened before 11 p.m. Saturday. Officers were told that the individual was ringing doorbells of homes in the area and running away with friends. The prank is known as a ding-dong ditch, and police said one resident responded with a gun. HPD said there will likely be a murder charge, as the shooting doesn't appear to be self-defense. Sergeant Michael Cass said the resident had a significant number of firearms in his home. HPD said it was told that the shooter ran out onto the street and fired shots as the pranksters fled. One child was transported to the hospital and died the next day. Officers detained a man for questioning but later released him. They did not reveal any identities at the time. It's unclear exactly what the pranksters did, but different variations of the ding-dong ditch prank can be found on social media. Last month in Illinois, a police chief said there was a door-kicking trend that was part of a TikTok challenge, which has been going on in cities around the country. One clip on X shows someone banging on a door. Law enforcement is warning parents to talk to their kids about the dangers of the pranks, which could also damage homes or result in criminal charges. David Lamb, NTD News.
Coming up in college football, a wild weekend of games concludes tonight as NFL great Bill Belichick makes his college debut. Dave Martin joins us to discuss. And New York City's Kaufman Music Center came alive this weekend with the sound of traditional bel canto singing. A special look at NTD's 10th International Chinese Vocal Competition when we come back. for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in tennis, as one of the favorites on the women's side was eliminated today by a former champion.
Yeah, Coco Gauff was upset today by 24th ranked Naomi Osaka, who won this event back in 2018. And again in 2020. Now, Osaka really had little trouble actually with Gauff in this one. Took her just 64 minutes to beat her 6-3, 6-2. Gauff, meanwhile, still struggling with her serve like she was at Wimbledon. So Osaka advances to the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam event for the first time since taking time off 2 years ago to have a baby. Now, also this afternoon, second-ranked Iga Swiatek advanced to the quarterfinals with a straight sets win. And meanwhile, on the men's side, now tonight, #1 ranked Yannick Sinner is in action, playing at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, looking to advance to the quarterfinals. Then tomorrow, we finally have the first big match on the men's side. 7th-ranked Novak Djokovic will face off American Taylor Fritz. Fritz ranked 4th in the world. He was runner-up last year at the Open. Meanwhile, Djokovic, of course, won this event 4 times, and he's been a runner-up 6 times. So that event is tomorrow, but it should be a good one, too, I'd say.
Well, shifting gears to baseball, Yankee slugger Aaron Judge joined some selective company with his latest home run Sunday. How many career home runs does he have now?
Yeah, that's the 358th of his career and 43rd this season. But 358 ties him for 5th all-time on Yankees history, tying with him the all-time great Yogi Berra. But listen to the top 5 he joins here. #1, Babe Ruth. #2, Mickey Mantle. 3rd in Yankees history in home runs, Lou Gehrig. #4, Joe DiMaggio. And then you've got Yogi Berra and Aaron Judge tied at 5th. So those 5 there, 5 Hall of Famers, really 5 of the best players to be playing all time in baseball. Now, as for the season, Judge, despite taking time off with that flexor strain in his elbow, still leads all of baseball in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage. He's 43 home runs, meanwhile, 4th in the league. And meanwhile, his Yankees starting to heat up. Just had their 7-game winning streak snapped on Sunday. They moved into tie for 2nd place in the AL East, just 2.5 games behind Toronto as the division race heat up with about a month left in the season here, Tiff.
Moving to college football news, last night's Miami-Notre Dame game capped a wild weekend. What teams impressed you the most?
You know, for sure last night Miami did. I wasn't quite sure how they would do without Cam Ward, who just graduated to the NFL, was the first overall pick in the draft. Of course, Miami-Notre Dame, a classic rivalry from back in the 80s and 90s. But also Florida State the day before. That was an impressive win they had over Alabama, especially after finishing last year just 2-10. It was almost like announcing they're back as a major powerhouse program. Now, Tommy Castellanos looked great at quarterback, both running and throwing the ball here. Conversely, I'm not sure what to make of Alabama, and this is Kalen DeBoer's 2nd season. He has just a 9-5 record. Now, remember, before him, of course, the great Nick Saban won 6 titles there at Alabama, so they have very high expectations. Meanwhile, Texas and Ohio State looked like both teams had great defenses. Meanwhile, Texas quarterback Arch Manning kind of struggled there, maybe under the spotlight a bit. He kind of admitted afterwards he wasn't really at his best. So there was a lot going on in college football there. That's what stood out to me.
Well, looking at tonight's sports schedule, we have 3 baseball games on, as well as 1 more college football game. What games stand out to you?
You know, the college football game is between a couple of unranked teams. This is North Carolina versus TCU. But this is Bill Belichick making his college coaching debut with the Tar Heels while facing Texas Christian. Now, Belichick, of course, amassed a record 6 Super Bowl titles while coaching in the NFL with the New England Patriots. He had 333 total wins between the playoffs and the regular season. That's the 2nd most all time behind John Shula. But after Tom Brady left, 3 of his final 4 years, the team did not make the playoffs. In his final season went with just 4-13. Now, after a year off, he was hired by the Tar Heels last December to be their head coach. But the 73-year-old really made more headlines in the offseason by being in a relationship with a 24-year-old. Now, in any case, the game starts tonight at 8 p.m. The Tar Heels are 3.5-point favorites. So, Tiff, I don't know if you followed the whole Belichick and his girlfriend thing, but the media has really been more interested in that side of it than the football side and talking with him. So we'll see if he can, just kind of work the NFL game, the football game, instead of the distractions that have been going on otherwise.
Bring sports back in focus.
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
NTD's 10th International Chinese Vocal Competition has wrapped up in New York City. After 3 days of soaring performances, the winners have been announced. NTD's Sherry Ning reports.
From Puccini to Chinese art songs, the sound of bel canto filled New York City's Kaufman Music Center. Contestants from around the world came together to showcase traditional vocal arts rooted in purity, authenticity, goodness, and beauty.
This helped me to verify what is more than what is tradition, and what I want to absorb from the world and from the history, from the modern world. I think it purifies me, because every time when you stand on the stage, you show everything, like of yourself, your inner heart, your technique.
Bel canto, Italian for beautiful singing, is a traditional vocal technique emphasizing purity of tone, smooth phrasing, and precise control. It forms the foundation of Western opera arias and Chinese art songs, both required in this competition. 1 gold, 3 silvers, 2 bronzes, and 4 honorable mentions were presented at the awards ceremony. The gold medal went to Song Ling Shi, a tenor from Vietnam.
Holding this gold award trophy in my hands, I feel immense pride and honor. It represents the highest glory pursued by all the singers who took part in today's competition. As I lift the trophy today, my heart is filled with pride and gratitude.
Audience members say the level of artistry on display rivaled the world's top stages.
When you have such a competition, you want to get the best, but actually you did get the best. And I'm a regular patron of the opera, of the Metropolitan Opera. And I was thinking as I was listening to the contestants that I hope the opera has a scout, because, they could recruit anybody here for their productions.
Vocalists with the world-renowned Shen Yun Performing Arts served on the panel of judges. American opera legend Frederica von Stade also offered contestants special guidance in a master class.
The power of the human voice to convey love and kindness and goodness and strength and beauty is just amazing, and we need it in our world right now, which is so upside down.
This prestigious competition is part of NTD's International Cultural and Arts Series. The 2025 NTD International Classical Chinese Dance Competition will take place September 11th to 14th. We'll bring you coverage of that event as well. Reporting from New York, Sherry Ning, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.